Chapter 13, Hartford Distributors, Manchester, Connecticut, Tuesday, August 3rd, 2010. And been working at the beer factory, as she called it, since 1990, fresh out of Yukon, where she double majored in English literature and sociology. She had applied just several days after graduation when she saw an ad in the Hartford Courant for a beer distributor position. When she arrived for her 10:30 appointment, after a hearty breakfast at Rein's, Boom Boom liked to joke that she ate there to keep her girlish figure. She also called herself a big-boned girl. She found herself the only female in a room full of men. That was nothing new for her. Long before Boom Boom came to be, Darlene April Richardson was born February 12, 1969. She would joke later that, obviously, being born on President's Day, I'm supposed to be president. She was born to a working single mother with two other children, boys from her previous marriage. It was a tough childhood. Her mother worked two jobs. Her brothers, 5 and 7 years older, either didn't know what to do with her or didn't much care. So her mother Cindy had to carry her around for the first few years until she could be placed in affordable daycare. Darlene always said that her love of Rein's Deli began when she was a baby, since that was the food she ate until she was about 3 years old. Cindy was a waitress there, a damn good one in fact. Had been there over 10 years and had her own mishmash of customers that would sit in her section towards the back, near the bar area where she kept baby Darlene. Rein's was a family operation. Cindy was one of the best they had, and management understood and indeed bent over backwards to allow Cindy to juggle her job and Darlene simultaneously. It certainly helped that Darlene smiled, laughed, and giggled all the time. Such a happy baby, Cindy's fellow employees and managers said, delighted, as they gathered around the crib in the corner. Darlene went from happy baby to happy kid to happy adult. Some people would have interpreted her sunny attitude as a coping mechanism for the way she looked. Although attractive, as an adult she was about 5'9", 225 pounds. She had always been heavy, and it had affected her both at home and at school. Teasing, bullying. She learned early that to avoid either, it was best to make potential bullies laugh, usually at her own expense, rather than try to outwit or outfight them. The outwitting part was easy. Darlene Richardson was very smart. She would have probably been able to outfight them as well, because Darlene Richardson was very strong. Darlene always found it best to fight fire with laughter. They don't want to hit you if they're laughing with you, was one of her sayings. She also was a huge fan of the Robin Williams line, joke 'em if they can't take a fuck. Since her brothers were so much older than her, they never included her in anything. Darlene, however, was nothing if not resourceful. As a kid, she would immerse herself in books. She took a liking to science fiction around the time Star Wars first came out, and it was a full-grown passion by the time she reached adulthood. Many is the time she'd tell her fellow workers at Hartford Distributors that she was headed for a long weekend at the beach, when in fact she was packing her custom-made Chewbacca costume for another Star Wars convention. She also had a Scotty outfit for Star Trek conventions. She'd pack both for major sci-fi events. Darlene also loved English literature, which ended up as one of her majors. While most Americans, especially your average 11-year-old overweight girl from Vernon, Connecticut, would have trouble with Shakespeare, Milton, Dickens, Blake, and Woolf, Darlene loved Canterbury Tales was not an easy read. By page 15, she had figured out the nuances in spelling and enjoyed it so much she would make sure she reread it every year. Like her love of science fiction, except for her fellow classmates at Yukon, She never shared her love of English lit with anyone. Darlene, unlike her mother and brothers, loved to learn, loved school, loved the atmosphere in a classroom. She wasn't fond of the lunchroom or the playground. They were her arenas, her rings. It was there she'd have to battle with what she referred to from age 13 on, after a heavy dose of English lit, as dweebs, dorks, dullards, and dimwits. 90% of the time through self-depreciating humor, 8% by simply verbally outwitting them, then that 2% when some moron, either boy or girl, would want to humiliate Darlene physically. Then Darlene would get out of her chair, ask her combatant, "Are you sure?" Then before the answer was given, out would come a straight left jab to the nose, followed by a quick right hook to the jaw. Another secret. The only thing her brothers had ever let her watch with them was either boxing or pro wrestling. She didn't just watch. She studied, she practiced, she mastered. It was at age 11, the same age her love of English literature began. She always thought boxing and English lit a strange combination. Only me. Then one of her brothers, Dan or Dave, she once said Mom had a D thing, tried to grab her. She ducked under, threw a rather good uppercut to the crotch, and sent Dan, or was it Dave, rolling, groaning on the floor. Neither of them mess with Sis anymore. Darlene attended Rockville High School in Vernon. Unlike Dan and Dave, who had both entered the labor market right after high school, Dan, the oldest, was a mechanic. Dave was a construction laborer. Darlene wanted to attend college. She knew her family couldn't afford it. She also knew she had the talent to earn a free ride to the University of Connecticut if she made the grades necessary to apply for scholarships. There were hundreds of thousands of dollars of scholarships available to Connecticut residents. Darlene was determined to earn as much of that dough as she could. And she did. A straight A 4.0 average for 4 years, with 3 of those years in a gifted and talented program. Thousands of dollars in scholarships, including the prestigious UConn Award with the prize of full scholarship to the University of Connecticut. Tied for first in her class with 2 other students, the school football star and an actress in many of the school's productions. She knew she would not be valedictorian. She was not looking for any affirmation from the Rockville High student body, several of whom she'd had to lay out early in her freshman year. However, she was looking for affirmation at UConn, which is why she decided on majors that interested her, not majors that would prepare her for any future career. High school sucked. She had never been to a dance, a game, or her proms. She never bought any yearbooks, never went back for any events or reunions, never gave the school any money. Even when she became successful at Hartford Distributors, couldn't care less if the damn building burned to the ground. University of Connecticut was different. She would tell anyone who would listen that UConn was among the best 4 years of her life. She loved her classes. She loved her teachers. She loved the store's Connecticut campus. She loved the fact that she had no monetary worries. So did Cindy, her mom. That with all the scholarship money she earned, she wouldn't have to take any kind of part-time job. So she studied. She was active in campus activities. She was active in off-campus activities. She even had several friends, both men and women. Darlene would describe this period of her life as follows. When I was studying, I studied hard. When I was working on an activity or with a group, I worked hard. When I was partying, I partied hard. And when I loved hard. Smile on her face, kind of a faraway look in her eye. Her college years were the first and maybe the only time Darlene felt comfortable in her own skin. When she wanted to be funny, she could be funny. It was not used as a defense mechanism or a survival tool. It was just part of who she was. She accepted her height. She accepted her weight. She liked to eat. She liked her alcoholic beverages, and that was that. Take me as I am was the way she lived her life those 4 years, and she regretted little of it. She still accomplished quite a bit. 3.45 average cumulatively on her double majors. President, vice president, or secretary-treasurer of a few campus organizations, including College Democrats, the yearbook staff, Sigma Tau Delta, which is the English Honor Society, the Drama Club, and others. and respect. Respect from her teachers, respect from her fellow students, respect for herself and who she was. It was a great 4 years for Darlene Richardson. And then it was over, and she found herself in her waiting room at Hartford Distributors with 5 other guys, all eyeing her suspiciously, with curiosity, and maybe a little anger thrown in. Darlene didn't give 2 shakes of a shit, as her mom liked to say. She would just look back at each of them until they looked away or down at the floor. Finally, it was her turn. She was so nervous she completely forgot her interviewer's name. Even after employment, she could not remember who it was that interviewed her. She assumed it had been one of the owners. Whoever it was, they were in for a shock. The lady who walked in was 5'9", shortish brunette hair, about 220 pounds, in a blue suit with white open collar blouse. A very conservative look that Darlene, after much research of the company and its owners, thought would be the type of outfit that would partially erase the woman in a man's world thought that would be unspoken yet present. When hiring for any kind of sales position, including those that are only mildly sales-driven initially, Hartford Distributors like to see if their potential employee knew how to sell themselves. Therefore, the first question was always, "Tell me a little bit about yourself." Darlene had done her research, had reached out to folks who knew employees at Hartford, and was ready and prepared for that lob softball. She covered her background, her family, her upbringing at Rein's Deli. The best. Had breakfast there before I came over. Her 4.0 at Rockland, her free ride at UConn, her 2 majors and 3.45 average, her leadership roles there, her work ethic. She presented herself as best as she could for 15 minutes. The next question was equally as simple. Why us? Several reasons. First, I like your product. Smiled to show she was joking. But to make sure, not enough that it kept me from a 4.0 in high school, a free ride at UConn, and a 3.45 there. Second, I want to earn as much money as I possibly can. As you can probably tell, I can talk. Smile. I can also sell. I can sell, I can cross-sell, I can upsell. She had only learned those words the night before. And I can do it better than anyone you have working here with the proper training. Beer distribution has traditionally been a man's game. I know. I was in your waiting room long enough to see it for myself. Both smiled. The difference with me is I'm strong enough to do all the heavy lifting necessary, and I'm smart enough to be able to cross-sell and upsell at the same time. I understand about starting in distribution, learning the business. I get that. But I'd like to make a trial close with you right now. I'll sign a 1-year contract and start in distribution tomorrow. If by this date, a year from now, I haven't broken every record you have on file for sales by a beer distributor, I'll come in, shake your hand, and be on my way. When I do break all the records, you have to promote me to my own territory for inside sales. Darlene stood up and reached out her hand. Do we have a deal? Whoever the interviewer was had the good sense to see quality talent no matter the package. He stood up and shook her hand. We have a deal. Then he went to his waiting room and, with Darlene smiling broadly just behind him, announced to the then 7 remaining male applicants that the position had been filled. Darlene Richardson became Boom Boom her first day on the job. While trying to learn how to operate a forklift, she lurched it into one neat high pile of alcoholic product, then panicked, lurched it backward into another high pile of alcoholic product. Boom, boom. You could hear the sound throughout the Hartford Distributors campus. Boom Boom more than made up for the spoilage caused that first day. Once she got by her understandable nerves around the forklift, she was an upselling, cross-selling, product placement, promotion machine. If clients, Boom Boom always called them clients, never customers. A customer could be a one-timer. A client is forever. Had Bud, she'd push Bud Light. If they had Bud Light, she'd push Michelob. She knew her product. She knew her clients. She knew their numbers. She could, standing there in her Hartford Distributors delivery uniform, unloading and placing product on the shelves or in coolers, explain to owners, managers, buyers how they could save money, make money, increase profit, decrease cost, simply by purchasing more, another, or by placing Bud Light, etc. in this prominent store location. Numbers, actual numbers, not approximately or guesstimate. She liked to learn. She liked to learn about new stuff, but she loved to learn about new stuff that would make her money. It did not take a year. It only took 9 months. Boom Boom was brought in, her delivery uniform was retired, and she received her new Hartford Distributors sales blouses. Shirts, really. She helped select them from a catalog. And there she stayed, breaking sales records, working Vernon, her home turf, parts of Manchester, and into East Hartford, keeping accurate records of all her clients, what they have and haven't purchased, how much, where the product was placed, what promotions they participated in, what their preferences were, what their preferences should be based on their home demographic. She also kept track of her clients, names, ages, birth dates, spouse names, spouse birth date, anniversary date, kids' names and birth dates, owners, GMs, managers, assistant managers, whoever she encountered. Then there were the cards. She read in How to Master the Art of Selling by Tom Hopkins, The Power of Cards, especially well-done, handwritten cards. She spent thousands of dollars a year on cards. Birthday cards, anniversary cards, get well cards, sympathy cards, but especially the holiday cards. She never sent a Christmas card. They got lost in the pile. She would alternate between Thanksgiving cards and New Year's cards. Her clients received a beautifully designed Thanksgiving or New Year's card with a personalized handwritten message. She was either in front of the herd or in the very back. She didn't care either way, as long as it was noticed. Every 6 months to a year or so, the owners would try to, quote, kick me upstairs, as Boom Boom called it. And she told them every 6 months to a year or so that she'd be more than happy to train. She'd be more than happy to have other salesmen ride with her. She'd even be happy to ride along with the beer distributors. She'd be happy to help in any way except manage. She did not want to manage anyone but herself and her clients. She was making 6 figures a year. She had her mom retired, living with her, and taking care of her comfortable house in Vernon, near Rein's, of course. She could have long lunches if she wanted to, spend extra time with a client if she wanted to, take long weekends if she wanted to. Management? No thanks. She joined organizations, both business and charitable. 3 chambers of commerce, Business Network International, BNI, Women in Business, WIB, Rotary, Kiwanis Club, and others. She was active politically, although very quietly. Both Democrats and Republicans buy beer. She celebrated her 5th year with the company. Was married briefly, 1995 to 1997. No kids. Her ex sued her for alimony and lost. She celebrated her 10th and 15th year with the company. As 2009 rolled into 2010, Boom Boom had a few heartbreaking, devastating Darlene moments. On Monday, December 28th, Darlene came home after a shortened work day to find her mom, Cindy, slumped on the sofa, dead of a massive stroke. She was only 71 years old. Darlene spent the rest of her holiday season planning the funeral, one of the largest in Vernon's history, due to Cindy's popularity at Rein's and other restaurants she'd worked at. Darlene was devastated, yet there was some contentment in that she'd given her mom over 12 years of retirement that Cindy would never have had on her own. Not so was her oldest brother, Dan. When 9/11 had hit, Dan had left the auto dealership he had been working at, headed down to Ground Zero, and volunteered for anything he could help with. He was there over a month, doing everything from digging for bodies to picking up food for the workers to making quick repairs on any of the vehicles headed into and out of the site. No one knew about the air. No one knew it was so deadly. When Dan first developed breathing challenges about a year after, then prostate cancer in late 2008, nobody had really connected the dots between the toxic air at Ground Zero and the rapidly developing caseload of volunteers suffering because of it. Dan died on January 21st, 2010 at the age of 47. Again, Darlene planned a funeral, less than a month removed from the last one. She buried Dan next to his mother at Grove Hill Cemetery in Vernon. And then Darlene went back to the comfort and security of Boom Boom, back to Hartford Distributors, the very next day. Boom Boom had helped train almost every single driver and salesperson who'd walked through Hartford stores since about 1992. The good ones and the bad ones. The ones who worked out, the ones who didn't. No matter what she thought of a trainee's sales ability, she always found something to like about them as a fellow human being. She always kept in mind that if they were in this profession now, chances are the next job they'd get would be in the same profession, and maybe it would be for one of her present or future clients. She had earned her reputation as a hard worker, a good and honest salesperson, and someone who treated everyone she came across as she would like to be treated, with dignity and respect. And so it was when the man Boom Boom heard was to be fired the morning of Tuesday, August 3rd, 2010. She had helped train him back when he was hired in 2008. A young African-American man, one of the few Hartford distributors had as employees. He had told her he'd tried for 18 months to get a job there. She related her story about being a woman entering what had been almost exclusively a man's world. From that point on, they called each other TB for Trailblazer. She had helped him as best she could. The challenge was his motivation. She told him earlier that with his smile and wit he'd do well, but that he'd have to work a little harder than most. But, she said, that's what TBs do. It was just a few weeks before, in early July, that she'd heard that management suspected he was stealing. They sent a private investigator to follow him and discovered he was selling beer out of his truck. They knew he and Boom Boom were fairly close, so they asked her to come in early just in case they needed her help. Boom Boom arrived at work at 6:30 a.m. She knew the meeting was scheduled for 7 o'clock, but she wanted to be there early to throw TB a smile before he went in. Plus, she had a pile of paperwork, the bane of every salesperson's existence. Her office was just off the front door, near to the warehouse area. About 6:55, he came in, carrying a red lunch pail. "Hey, TB," she smiled and said. He had a dazed look. He gave her a small grin and walked on. He knows what's coming, she thought. Hope he takes it okay. She was sitting at her desk, hoping that everything would go smoothly, when she heard the operations director scream, "Omar, you can't!" followed by loud bangs. Oh my fucking God, she thought as she jumped up out of her desk. He's shooting people. She then heard, "Omar, no! Omar, no!" followed by 2 more shots. As she came out of her office, he was headed in her direction. She had no fear at all. She was plenty pissed off. "TB, what in the fuck are you doing? Stop this shit now!" He calmly said to her, "TB, my beef ain't with you. It's with these racist motherfuckers." Then he pushed her hard back into her office, knocking her over her desk and onto the floor. Boom Boom had been knocked onto plenty of floors in her life, so that fazed her only a moment, which was time enough for him to kill 3 more men in the driver's area of the warehouse, one of them ramming the forklift he was driving into a wall and catching it on fire. She was out of her office as mad as she'd ever been in her life, not caring if he had a Ruger SR9 semi-automatic pistol in his hand, not caring anything other than to get him to stop. As she was running towards him, he was running towards someone else, shooting him twice in the back. She then heard, "Omar, no, no," heard 3 shots, then found him standing over his 7th victim. "God damn it, TB, what the fuck?" He turned around, said nothing, and pistol whipped the side of her head, knocking her to the ground and out. She woke up in an ambulance on the way to Manchester Memorial Hospital. What happened? An EMT responded, "You got whacked in the head." No, I know that. What happened after that?" "When did he hit you?" "Right after he put 3 slugs in a friend of mine." "Okay, he found one other guy, chased him into the parking lot, basically executed him, then ran back inside, locked himself in an office, then killed himself." Oh God. She began to cry. For her friends. And for TB. What in the hell had happened to make him go so apeshit? She got back home the next day. She'd been kept at Manchester Memorial for 24 hours for observation for concussion protocol, for the 15 stitches she received on the side of her head, and to keep her away from the battalion of media that descended on Hartford Distributors. For the next week, she stayed away from work, attended the funerals and memorial services for her 8 friends, and found out about TV's racism claims through TV and the Hartford Courant. She suffered a concussion, stitches, and as she was to painfully discover, something else. A bad case of PTSD, post-traumatic stress disorder. A while ago, she bought a house big enough for her mother and herself. Now it was just her in a building big enough for a family of 6, and she heard every creak, every strange sound. Every dark room, every movement outside triggered something deep inside her. It just didn't affect her at home. You dared not surprise Boom Boom. You dared not come up behind Boom Boom. You dared not move yourself in any sudden manner at Boom Boom. Boom Boom wouldn't scream. She wouldn't curse. She'd turn on either a right or left fist and put you on your ass. Friend, coworker, client, even her brother Dave, if you didn't firmly and loudly announce your presence, you were going to get hit hard. That went on for months until the serious drinking she'd begun shortly after it, as she called the shootings, began affecting her physically. Trying to stop being scared. She kept drinking because it kept the nightmares away. She drank more to stop hitting people. She drank more because her drinking was starting to affect her work, and she felt guilty and angry and pissed with herself. Before all this had occurred, before the fear, the violence, the drinking, the downward spiral, she had become Manchester 29. During the funeral, she received a slightly oversized card. The Columbine postmark frightened her. Thought it might have been from some twisted fuck trying to pull a sick prank. She opened it, read the first line. Dear Darlene, parenthesis, Boom Boom. There are many men and women who wonder what they would. You saw suffering and tried to stop it as best you could. You are a hero. She cried for an hour, followed the directions, got on the site, and was amazed at the information that had already been accumulated there. She knew the site could be a source. She just wasn't ready to allow it to help her. Hartford Distributors hung with her as long as they could. She could do her paperwork at home. Going into the building was too traumatic. She was allowed time for counseling and therapy. Hartford even paid most of it. She was allowed every single bit of leeway the company could allow. After all, a healthy Boom Boom held every sales record the company had kept track of. Finally, they could do no more, and she understood. She was released on July 15, 2014. With her help and support, she was eligible and was granted permanent disability due to her PTSD. Boom Boom was no more. That just meant she had more time to drink, and she did. By the time Navy Yard 14 became her mentor in early 2017, Darlene had been in and out of rehabilitation, group and single counseling, Alcoholics Anonymous 3 separate times, extensive psychiatric evaluation, and 2 failed suicide attempts. Both attempts foiled by her brother Dave, once by pills, once by cutting her wrists. After her second attempt in late 2016, Dave moved in with her, throwing away all the booze, making her head back to AA for a 4th time, making sure she went to her counseling appointments, even if that meant taking a vacation or sick day from work, and driving her himself. After Darlene told him about the site, he even insisted she contact her mentor, Navy Yard 14. She understands, sis. She's been through it. Most importantly, Dave made her feel safe in her own house. It took time, it took effort, it took the love and support of a whole bunch of people, including her former employers, still friends and very much rooting for her at Hartford Distributors. But Darlene was finally digging out of the huge crater she and PTSD had dug for herself. And then it came crashing down. On Monday, May 28, 2018, Memorial Day, Dave was headed back home to Vernon from Maine, where he'd been at a friend's camp for a week. At about 5 p.m., he took a break at the last rest stop on the main turnpike to get gas and coffee. As he was pulling back onto the turnpike, he was fiddling with his radio, trying to get a station, and did not see an 18-wheeler changing lanes. His SUV was blasted off the road and into the trees. Dave was gone. Darlene received the call from Maine State Police at about 7:30 p.m. Miss Richardson? Miss Darlene Richardson? Trepidation, fear, all came crawling back to her. Yes, this is Darlene Richardson. This is Captain Bill Roswell of the Maine State Police. She began to cry. Davy. Not Davy, please. I'm sorry, Miss Richardson. She would never remember the rest of the call. It was as if her subconscious had taken in so much shit these past 8 years that it would not accept one more item. She doesn't know if she thanked him. She doesn't know what information he gave her about Dave's body returning to Vernon. She just mentally and physically shut down. She stared at a blank wall in her house. I want to drink. I want to die. I want it all to be over. I don't want to be here anymore. If you were to ask Darlene why she did what she did next, as Ray Wilson did the moment he met her, she would tell you that she didn't know why, except she could just hear Dave's voice, as clear as if he were there, saying over and over, "She understands, sis. She's been through it." Darlene stumbled to her computer, got on the site, requested her mentor, maybe yard 14. Maxine happened to have just returned from a cross-country flight and was beat. But as she always did, she changed into jeans and a t-shirt, plopped herself in front of her computer, went to the site, saw Manchester 29's request, and replied, "Hey, what's up? My brother just died. I can't do this anymore. Call me now. 703-765-5546. Now." Darlene called, and they talked from 7:45 in the evening until 4:30 in the morning. They talked about everything, about Dave, Darlene, and her life, and the shooting. They talked about Maxine, her life, my lives, she laughed, and her shooting. They talked, they cried, they laughed. When Ray met Darlene, he was also told that Maxine saved my life that night. Then we have that in common. She saved mine too. Maxine helped in other ways. She found a planner who would plan Dave's funeral on Maxine's dime, so that burden was erased. She also took a week off and drove up to Vernon, helping to make sure that Darlene did not literally unravel and lose her mind. When the funeral was over, when Dave was buried next to his brother and sister in Grove Hill Cemetery, when it was just her and Maxine at Rein's having dinner, Maxine told her about the plan. She wasn't sure why she did it. Maybe to give Darlene some meaning in her life, something to help ease her pain, something to look forward to, for lack of a better term. Darlene understood why, but she was noncommittal. She needed time to think, to figure out what she wanted to do. Maxine told her she'd be in touch to set up a meeting with Ray. As they ate, Darlene was aware of one truth, one overwhelming, clear certainty. The one thing she absolutely knew without a shadow of a doubt was that without Maxine, Darlene Richardson would not be sitting there, alive, enjoying this amazing ball of matzo ball soup she had in front of her. It was Wednesday, July 4th at 9 a.m. when Ray Wilson pulled into the strip center parking lot that contained Rein's New York Deli. Damn, crowded. Wonder how long you'll have to wait for a table. He had been told to go in and head right to the hostess table. The looks he received from everyone in line was not friendly, to say the least. Meeting a friend, he said over and over and over again. Man, these people want to kill me, he thought. Finally, he reached the hostess, young and apparently a little stressed. "Hi, looking for Darlene Richardson?" "Over there." She pointed in the general direction of the top left portion of the dining room, over in her corner. As he was walking through and around the crowd, he saw her waiting in the upper left corner. She waved, he waved back, and headed over. After asking her why she'd called Maxine, how she'd saved both their lives, and a chat about their respective bouts with alcohol, Ray started in on the plan. "I'm in, Ray." "You've thought this over?" "Yep." "You're sure?" "Yep, and your next question is why." "Why?" "Ray, I've been a success my whole life up to the moment it occurred. I was a strong, successful woman working in a man's world. Then it all came crashing down. I could blame lots of stuff. I won't. It was me. I fucked up. I could have taken my counseling more seriously, my therapy more seriously. I could have stayed away from the booze. I could have done a whole lot of things. I didn't. Now I have the chance not only to do something in honor of my dead friends, but in a weird way to do something for Omar too." "The shooter?" "Yeah, the shooter. He shouldn't have been able to buy a semi-automatic weapon. No one should be able to buy a semi-automatic weapon. There was something wrong there with him too. There must be better background checks. He never should have been allowed to buy a weapon. Period." Ray called Maxine from the car when he and Darlene were done. Hi, she's in, and I can see why you think so highly of her. Yeah, she's a tough lady. I just hope she can keep her shit together. Love her to death, though. Yeah, she was very impressive. I liked her. So, where do you want to head now? Do we have anything close? How about Massachusetts? Wakefield 24. Wakefield? I've never heard of a Wakefield. Yeah, it was called the Wakefield Massacre. Occurred back in 2000. Terribly similar to Hartford Distributors.